Straight ahead, legislation landslide. State lawmakers filed more than 1,500 bills in just a matter of hours. Public education is a top priority this session. My exclusive interview with the head of the Texas Education Agency goes in depth about proposed changes. Energy boost. Exports of liquefied natural gas from Texas to the European Union could soon rise and help the state's oil and gas industry. The EU's ambassador to the U.S. tells us what else could be on the table in an exclusive interview. And JWP at 40, John Wiley Price is the longest-serving elected leader in Dallas County. Steve Pickett catches up with this political icon about his 4 decades of public service. Good morning, I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics starts now. Happy Sunday to you and welcome to Eye on Politics. We begin with the legislation landslide at the Texas Capitol. Lawmakers are fired up about the new legislative session starting January 14th and filed more than 1,500 bills on the first day alone that they were eligible to do so. Many of the bills center around funding for public schools and school choice, which Governor Greg Abbott has said he now has more votes than needed to pass it. We spoke with the man who oversees K-12 education in Texas, Mike Morath, the Texas Education Agency Commissioner, about school choice and other topics. Morath spoke at Collin College in Frisco last week, where there was a policy summit on education and workforce development. The new president of the University of North Texas, Harrison Keller, told the crowd that many incoming freshmen are not prepared for the lowest math courses and drop them. And we asked Morath about that.
The unfortunate truth is that the disruptions to public education due to the COVID-19 pandemic, not just in Texas, but really across the country, were pretty disastrous for educational attainment for our children. And we in Texas fared better than most states and have largely recovered in the reading and writing skills, English language arts skills of our children. But in mathematics proficiency, we have not recovered. Mathematics is so much the language of both higher educational attainment and career that the lack of proficiency in mathematics is really holding a lot of students back. And that's what he, as a university president, is of course seeing freshmen come in who have an inadequate background in mathematics and are therefore doing quite poorly in college math classes.
As you know, Governor Abbott just announced last week that he's got the votes to pass school choice in the House. The Senate already passed it and will likely do so again. But I'm wondering, in your estimation, what are the benefits to school choice and what is your biggest concern for public schools if school choice were to pass?
Well, I'll answer the question staying focused on the issue of mathematics in particular. Individual students may have specific mathematics gaps that are different from one child to the next. If we can give our parents options to take ownership of that and real tools to take ownership of that, then they can provide individualized supports to meet the needs of their specific children in ways that might not be possible in a normal traditional classroom full of kids. As Commissioner of Education, I'm for good schools. I want more good schools, more available for more families, and I don't much quibble over who is running the school and how, as long as it's delivering for the children and families that attend it.
A lot of discussion about providing more funding for public schools in the next legislative session. And some people have called for an increase in the basic student allotment, not by a little, but by a lot. And also basing funding on enrollment as opposed to attendance. Do you agree with both of those?
Well, I can speak to the latter point. So Texas's school finance system funds our students based upon a combination of factors. It's a very a differentiated funding system meant to give more money to kids who need more resources in a very fair way. A part of that is funding kids based upon them showing up to school each day. The best evidence that we have is that is a remarkably beneficial policy for children because it ensures that the administrators of the school are concentrating on making kids show up to school every day, and that's how the school is funded. So we generally see the benefit of an attendance-based funding model being pretty significant. We think if you would switch to a model that is just, the kid shows up one day, you get the whole money for the whole year, bad things happen as a result of that. So no, I would not be in favor of switching away from attendance to enrollment, because I think it ultimately is harmful for students. To your other question, your question about funding more broadly, the current level of K-12 funding in Texas public education is as high as it's ever been. The most recent legislative session, there was somewhere between $1 billion and $2 billion per year of additional funds given to our K-12 schools by the legislature. So the level of state and local funding in public schools in Texas is at an all-time high. The dilemma that I think our schools face is there was one-time money provided by the federal government, and it was an extraordinarily large amount of money, about $5 billion with a B per year, and that money is expiring. And so they're dealing with this cut made by the federal government, which is a real funding cut, because they had that money temporarily and now it's gone. So I think schools in all over the state of Texas and really all over the country are wrestling with that drop, even though the legislature has consistently put more money into public education.
New money, though? I mean, because last time we saw the state picked up more of the tab using state funds as opposed to property tax revenues.
Yeah, you're talking about Senate Bill 2. So independent of Senate Bill 2. So because Senate Bill 2 did not change the level of total funding that schools did. It changed tax policy a little bit. But independent of that, there was the Tier 2 golden penny yield went up. There was additional money in for school safety and additional money for instructional materials. And the sum total of all of that was north of $1.5 billion of new money per year in the most recent legislative session.
And I wanted to ask you about teacher pay raises, because that's a big issue. Do you believe the state legislature should set aside specific funding for school districts to give teachers a raise, just as they did during the 2019 legislative session?
So the complexity of this is you have 1,200 independently governed school districts, and it is actually the local school board that controls how many teachers are employed and what their pay compensation system is. Here in North Texas, you have the example of the Dallas Independent School District that has a system of compensation raises so that the highest paid teachers in Dallas make actually more than $100,000 a year. That is a somewhat unusual compensation model in the state, but that is a decision that local school districts make. I'm a big fan of increasing pay for teachers, for as many teachers as we can, and also for rewarding our excellent teachers with higher and higher levels of pay so they can stay in classrooms longer and longer. And I would certainly advocate for that kind of support from the legislature, have previously.
I asked Morath about President-elect Donald Trump's plan to shut down the U.S. Department of Education and give money directly to the states, but Morath said he's not focused on that, just on Texas. And staying on education, Governor Greg Abbott told the state's public colleges and universities they cannot raise tuition for the next 2 years. In a letter Wednesday, the governor said, quote, "Let me be clear, I will not support any tuition increase at any public higher education institution in the upcoming biennium." He also said, when inflation and other economic pressures burden household budgets, our public universities must take every step possible to ease the financial burden on our students and their families. Abbott said he spoke with the Board of Regents at every public university system and that they agreed to keep tuition the same through the 2026-27 school year. Now to an update on the race for the Texas House Speaker, where the current Speaker, Dade Phelan, is hoping to stay on the job. But he's facing fellow Republican Representative David Cook of Mansfield. In a briefing Thursday on the platform X, Texas GOP Chair Abraham George, who we spoke with last week, said only Representative Cook has committed to passing the party's platform, including excluding Democrats from serving as committee chairs in the Texas House next year. George said Speaker Phelan hasn't made any public statements about the party's priorities.
I believe Texas needs to hear from him on where he stands on this. We don't know where he stands. We don't know where we stand with him on this.
Two Democratic state representatives have joined the Speaker's race, Ana Maria Ramos and John Bryant, both of Dallas. Because the Democrats are in the minority at the legislature, neither is likely to win. The Texas oil and gas industry could soon get a boost if there's an increase in exports of liquefied natural gas produced here in the state. The European Union ambassador to the United States raised that possibility in an exclusive interview with me during a recent visit to Fort Worth.
What Europe is right now experiencing at the moment is a huge pressure, not only because of the energy prices, but because of the weaponization of energy.
European ambassador to the U.S., Jovita Nelepshina, blames Russia for weaponizing energy against Europe.
After Russia invaded Ukraine, there was a joint decision of 27 member states actually to phase out of Russian gas and oil.
She says the EU has been buying $65 billion worth of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, from the U.S., including Texas, which is a 70% increase of what it used to be. The Texas Comptroller's Office says in 2023, Texas exported more than 1.3 billion cubic feet of LNG, worth more than $9 billion, and about 1/3 of exports from the U.S. Do you expect to buy more from Texas and the United States?
So hopefully we will continue to phase out Russian LNG as well in the upcoming several months. So that actually gives really a huge possibilities for states like Texas to export even more.
She says the EU is committed to supporting Ukraine.
Because for us, it's actually an existential threat.
The EU reportedly relies on American fighter jets like the F-35 produced by Lockheed Martin in Fort Worth.
That actually more than half of what we spend on defense we spend here in the United States and in Texas.
The ambassador says the EU's trade with and investment in Texas add up to nearly 270,000 jobs and more than $300 billion a year.
I was told that everything is bigger in Texas, so I can tell that actually our trade cooperation with Texas is the biggest
out of all the states.
Out of all the states.
I asked the ambassador about the potential for tariffs imposed by the new Trump administration on foreign goods. She said they want to focus on the positive relationship between the EU and U.S. and that they may buy more energy goods produced in Texas. Speaking of the Trump administration, Texans will be working with the president-elect. Mr. Trump has tapped John Ratcliffe, who will serve as the CIA director. Ratcliffe served as the director of national intelligence during the latter part of the President Trump's first term. Before that, Ratcliffe was a congressman for the 4th District in North Texas and served as a United States attorney in the Eastern District of Texas, which includes Collin and Denton counties. He was also mayor of Heath. The president-elect also named Elon Musk, who's now a Texas resident and majority owner of Tesla, X, and SpaceX, to work with former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy at a newly created Department of Government Efficiency. This department is really more like a commission and will work outside the government and advise the White House how the federal government can be structurally reformed. Other Texans often mentioned for potential cabinet posts are Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Now to a race that got national attention that involved Texas Senator John Cornyn. He lost a chance to become the next Senate Majority Leader. Cornyn was a runner-up as the 53 Republican senators who will serve in the next Congress selected Senator John Thune of South Dakota over Cornyn. A third candidate, Senator Rick Scott of Florida, did not make it out of the first round of voting. In a move that raised some eyebrows, Senator Ted Cruz announced he was voting for Senator Scott over Cornyn in the first round. No word if he voted for Cornyn in the second round of voting. The Dallas and Tarrant County Republican parties opposed Cornyn being selected, but at the end of the day, it was a decision made solely by the senators. Cornyn is up for re-election in 2026. 40 years and counting. Steve Pickett's exclusive interview with Dallas County Commissioner John Wiley Price about his decades in elected office, the longest in the county, when Eye on Politics returns. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. JWP. Those three letters have become synonymous with the longtime Dallas County Commissioner John Wiley Price. When he was first elected in 1984, he broke the barrier. And since then, he has set a new bar for public service in the county. Steve Pickett had an exclusive interview with Price to discuss his 4 decades in office.
The label I give me is servant.
He may be the most recognizable face and name in Dallas's political landscape.
We are at his house.
revered and reviled for years, 40 years, pushing, prodding, protesting, and picketing.
I've been here 40 years as a commissioner. I was here 10 years as assistant to a judge, and I've only missed 90 days of work. Got a motion and a second.
John Wiley Price, Dallas County's longest-serving elected official, a county commissioner.
Yes, this
what have you received?
court will come to order.
So what? Make me come to order. Nope. I do not apologize.
Confrontational, combative, combustible, committed.
And I get angry about the right kinds of things.
Since his election on a November night in 1984, Price remains a lead captain in the campaign to ensure people of mostly southern Dallas District 3
We're not going away!
benefited from the county's multi-billion-dollar system of public health, public safety and service in courts and corrections, and jobs.
For the last 4 or 5 years, this woman has been constantly badgering and assaulting African-American men.
Critics have called him a racial rabble-rouser, using threats and intimidation under the cloak of civic and civil activism. Inside his downtown Dallas office, I asked him about his motivation for running for office 40 years ago.
Too long, as Frederick Douglass said, has others spoken for us. It's time for us to speak for ourselves. Steve, I don't really even know if I had a platform. It was the fact that at the county level, there was basically no representation. No justice, no peace.
No representation meant no relief from Price's passion-fueled protests on Dallas streets, his demand for black representation in school district operations, his marches outside Dallas media outlets, or the lack of minority and women firms being awarded multi-million-dollar construction and other service contracts for local public projects. Today, 40 years later, change is evident. Minority judges leading criminal courtrooms in Dallas, diversity for the county's health system, even jail detention jobs. But Price wants more.
The majority of my district judges are African American, females. But my thing is accountability now. Are you working? Parkland will tell you, I'm advocating for African American. Doctors don't run hospitals, nurses do.
For years now, he has sat as the ranking member of Dallas County's elected body of representatives. But Price has also held the other title, the outsider, the leader known to many in Black Dallas as, quote, our man downtown. What did it mean then, and what does it mean now when they say our man downtown?
Now it means that I have kind of validated myself. It's not just a colloquialism or a statement, he's our man, a niche word. That means that he represents us.
Price remains Dallas County's only elected black member of the court.
Jury has spoken.
But he's also the only one who faced criminal indictment on multiple bribery and tax fraud charges. A jury found him not guilty or hung on all charges. A judge did sentence him to jail back in 1991 for his actions during a protest, and his supporters back then backed him with a protest at that jail. I don't know if you care one way or the other, but what do you think when you're still defined as the villain of Dallas County?
I don't care one way or the other.
He turned 75 this year. As Dallas has grown, Mr. Price knows his seat at the decision-making table has been part of that growth, complete with that our man downtown attitude.
At least if they say John Wiley Price, I want him to be able to look and say, he was on mission, he built, he made things better than when he found them. I will not back down.
In Dallas, Steve Pickett, CBS News Texas.
All right, thank you, Steve. Coming up, some Texas counties are sounding the alarm about a problem that could make the difference between life and death when Eye on Politics comes right back. Some Texas counties are sounding the alarm about a problem they say may make the difference between life and death. We're talking about emergency medical services. Sarah Jenkins explains in this week's brief.
Counties in Texas are facing bigger challenges in funding emergency medical services due to a growing and aging population, particularly in rural and metro-adjacent areas. A recent survey of Texas counties revealed nearly half of those responding had open EMS positions, and about half of those had no volunteers available. Long response times for EMS were common, with many counties reporting round trips of 1 to 3 hours to trauma centers. Some of the challenges include competition for trained personnel, with many volunteers retiring and fewer replacements due to rising living costs and staff that leave for higher-paying positions in urban areas. There's a strong push for a sustainable financial solution, as traditional fundraising methods are no longer sufficient to cover the high costs of EMS operations. Several county leaders plan to seek dedicated state funding to support rural EMS when the state legislature reconvenes in January.
And remember, our full interviews are on our website at cbsnewstexas.com. Go to the Eye on Politics section. And that's all for Eye on Politics this week. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next week. And from all of us, have a great weekend.